Hello and welcome to Starboard Consulting's Adding a Layer of Control to Your Work Management Process. My name is Bill Thompson. I will be your moderator this morning. Today we'll cover how Maximo and their HSE solution and the mass solution for Maximo 8 can help mitigate risk and preventable costs within your Maximo environment and operating procedures. The most important thing covered today will be how Maximo can help you prevent incidents related to health, safety, and the environment. Will be led by Kyle Harding, Starboard's Director of Product Management. My name is Bill Thompson again, and I've been involved with the Maximo community for the last 31 years, and I've been witness to the evolution of Maximo from a simple technology being implemented on a global basis for heavy industry to a technology enabler for the enterprise asset management community, including asset performance management. Maximo has been used as a condition monitoring tool, since the late 1990s. It has been a technology enabler for thousands of companies across the globe. And today we're going to focus on how the HSE priorities can be managed within the Maximo application. Starboard Consulting has been a technology enabler for Maximo users for the last 16 years, and our leader today, Kyle Harding, was witness to the evolution of Maximo as a risk management tool, and that's what he's going to detail today. I'm going to talk about a little bit how Maximo and HSE has helped organizations manage risk through incident reporting, risk assessments, and some other items. And I'd like to pass the microphone over to Mr. Kyle Harding to lead our session this morning. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill. As Bill said, this morning's session is going to be about adding a layer of control to your work management process. I had started actually with MRO back in 2004. MRO was the company that was acquired by IBM. I spent a lot of time working on some of the early versions of Maximo. My job primarily initially was focused on some of the service desk products. So I took some of my experience on the service desk product and started working with the HSE team. So this morning I'm going to go through some of the service desk functionality, some of the HSE functionality that allows you to add that layer of control and risk assessment and risk identification to your work management process. Before we jump in, there is just a quick survey. I'm just interested in seeing where the audience is in terms of knowing their company's safety slogan and knowing if your HSE tools that your companies are using are integrated with your Maximo business processes. So there is a link in the Q&A to a quick Menti survey, those two questions. So if you could just take a quick second and just respond to that survey. And I'll just give you a minute to do that.
Kyle, I'd just like to add, in addition to the survey, you have an opportunity to submit your questions through the Q&A window, and we will address all the questions at the end. And two more event items is this session is being recorded and will be distributed to all registered attendees. Thanks, Kyle.
Thank you. So it's just the results of the survey. Looks like we have a few people who are joining and are able to get in here. We'll just give it a minute to kind of settle. But as I was preparing for this presentation, one of the things I did is I went out and I looked at the attendee list. And as I kind of scanned the list, I went to some of the different websites of the companies who had signed up and took a look and searched on things like safety culture or safety slogan, because it's really an indication of the focus that pretty much all of the companies that we're working with have on safety, and really focused on the risks that are really driving some of those safety campaigns. So let me just go to the second question. Okay, so it looks like we have some integration. So my goal by the end of this presentation is to help any of the participants understand some of the tools that are available in Maximo HSE as a Maximo add-on, right? It can drop on top of your existing Maximo platform and really extend some of the functionality and some of the capabilities that can be provided from your Maximo implementation. So as I looked at some of those safety slogans, right, there's a few that were out there that were interesting. I just grabbed a couple screenshots. So whether it's leading a safety culture, engaging and educating employees and customers, right, encouraging people to speak up and to stop things that they see that they think are wrong, are really, I would say, permeate all of the attendees today. Everybody has some level of focus on safety, right? Looking at the list, these are kind of a few of those statements. So NASA had some interesting ones. Again, it's all about creating a safe environment, both for their workers as well as the customers that they're working with. Down at the bottom, you see there's a link to a poster that talks about caught doing the right thing. So this is kind of a neat program. It's really gamification of observing SOPs and any processes that are put in place and taking a picture and really rewarding an employee who is following the steps in a job plan or using PPE the right way or making sure that if there's a leak possibility that they're putting all of the steps in place to ensure that the mitigation is in place in case anything happens. What I would surmise is that all of these companies recognize, right, that in their operating environments, there's high levels of risk, right? And all of those risks have the potential to interrupt their ongoing operations, their maintenance, impact the well-being of their companies, their employees, their customers, as well as the environment. So the more thought that goes into identifying all of the potential risks and the tools that are used to help them identify the potential risks and how quickly they consider the likelihood of the occurrence and impact, it really drives the immediacy and the level of those risks. Just a few more. Oglethorpe, attention to safety. Southwest Florida International Airport was recognized by the FAA for their efforts. Encore, safety is always a priority. It's really kind of that focus on the safety nature and the safety culture for their employees and encouraging employees to really become, I would call them their human sensors, to observe their environment, to report what's going on. This last one I have here is from our friends at PowerGen. So I thought this was a great statement. It kind of incorporates a lot of the pieces that we're going to be talking about this morning, but it talks about compliance and operating in a highly regulated environment and their commitment to compliance and maintaining that compliance. Really about training and having the proper resources in place to maintain the proper levels of training and the proper committees to address issues as they come up. Job safety briefings, some of us call it PSSR, which is a pre-start safety routine, or a toolbox talk, where before work commences, it's really reviewing the risks that are present in the environment and how that crew might address those risks. Near miss reporting, so encouraging near misses. But you want to be able to capture as many near misses as possible because it'll allow you to start to discover some trends in the data and some root cause analysis that can be performed to identify why the near misses are happening and remove those root causes before the near misses turn into incidents with injury and much larger impact on the environment. Right? The goal overall and the goal of really the HSE product itself is really to identify risks and prevent as many incidents from occurring as possible. So when we talk about risk and mitigation, I think everybody has a good understanding of it, but I thought this simplification of this process was a great video that demonstrates kind of these 5 steps. right? Identifying and analyzing risk, reviewing possible solutions, picking a solution and then implementing it, checking to see if the solution that was enabled is effective, right? Make any changes to the solution that you put in place, and then take action. So let me just play this quickly. This was something I found on YouTube. So this infant's on a bed, quickly identifies and analyzes the risk, determines he needs to put a solution in place, looks around and finds a possible solution. He starts to implement it. He gets those pillows in the proper landing area so he can get off the bed. It's a very simple video, but I think it illustrates kind of some of the main talking points and takeaways that I really have for this presentation this morning. It's really, identifying the risks that are in your environment and putting the proper steps in place to mitigate those risks. So here he's implemented a solution. He's going to check. He's going to see if there's anything that needs to be changed. And then he's going to take action. So he has success. He's gotten off the bed, and now he can begin his day. So kind of stepping from thinking about that simplified process to the environments that you're all operating in, right? High risk industries, there's lots of operational risk, environmental risk, regulatory compliance, high availability, business risk, dynamic risk that all have to be addressed on an ongoing basis. And I think one of the challenges that we often have is when we think about Maximo, or when customers think about Maximo, they think about asset maintenance and asset health and warranty tracking and PMs and work planning and scheduling, right? Maximo HSE is really focused on the workers who are turning the wrenches and keeping them safe as they walk through the steps on a work order or operate a piece of equipment or are working at height or in a trench or are using PPE to stay safe when there are certain hazards present. The second use case that I'm going to go through today is also around ensuring regulatory compliance because of the high-risk industries. There's quite often a high level of regulation that's in place. Right? So just to bring it all together, right? Maximo users are typically operating in high-risk industries, and Maximo HSE provides the capability to systematically identify risk and provide you the mechanisms to help you manage and mitigate all the types of risks you might encounter within your business and within your business process. So when we talk a little bit about the capabilities of HSE, right? HSE provides those tools to identify and mitigate risk in a consistent and a repeatable way that can be added to an existing work management business process. So within the HSE footprint, things like job plans, PMs, risk assessment, permit to work, and permit to work templates, hazard review checklists, safety plans, isolations and bypass tools, toolbox talk, regulation and compliance, incident reporting, operator log, investigations, audit and survey are all applications that fall within the HSE footprint. What I'm going to do this morning is just focus at a very high level on a couple of the tools that can be used to add risk assessment capability, the ability to generate permit to work records within work order tracking, the regulatory compliance use case, and then the incident management and near miss reporting capabilities that HSE brings to the table. So the first one I want to talk about is risk assessment and permit to work. So if we take a look at, this is just an example of an existing work management process, right, that was created in a tool called BlueWorks, which is an IBM tool. So typically there's a work request that comes into the maintenance manager. Maintenance manager picks up that request. They define and categorize the work, right? They fill out all of the details that need to be filled out and capture the required fields. And based upon the attributes that are captured on that work order, it leads to the requirement that a risk assessment be performed. So risk assessment has a specific application within HSE that allows you to identify the risks, the precautions, perform standardized hazard reviews, drive the record, the risk assessment record through a review and approval process if you need to, add a lot of checklist type capabilities so you're not missing certain steps, identify environmental risk, right? Identify the assessment team, and then take advantage of a lot of kind of the core capabilities of Maximo and the way that Maximo maintains those relationships between related records, right? So risk assessment is being performed against a particular piece of work. So when I end up on my work order record, I want to be able to see that reference to the risk assessment, as well as some of those details from the risk assessment. So this is just a quick screenshot of risk assessment in HSE. It's probably from the 761, 762 release. I know some of the screens are now starting to look a little bit different with some of the work that's going on with the current releases of Maximo. But these are probably a representation of what a lot of you are familiar with today. So just being able to capture the type and category of the risk assessment being performed, and then an example of a hazard review checklist using the review action capabilities that HSE provides. Right? So these are completely configurable. Right? We're showing in this example some job safety analysis definition and controls that can be populated by the customer. One of the things that you'll observe here is the ability to have yes, no type questions, not applicable, alphanumeric capture, as well as scoring and checklist capability. They can also be nested. So if I have is there a heat hazard, when I see one of the caution signs, it's just an indicator there's additional sub questions under this standard action that need to be answered. So based upon some of these answers that are captured on the risk assessment, it could lead to a permit being required in order to execute the work. So what we see in this representation of this process is we're going from the risk assessment to a permit request being generated based upon the outcome of the risk assessment. So the permit request is generated, they're going to prepare, right? I might have an ops manager, right, who's preparing the permit. It could be a review and approval process, implement any of those controls for the hazards that have been identified as part of the risk assessment and as part of the permit preparation that are put in place, and then the issue and acceptance process. So depending upon the level of complexity of your process, in some industries, the separation of duties of issuing the permit and then accepting the permit need to be different roles within an organization. Right, I want to make sure that the person who's issuing isn't the person who's accepting. So just to make sure there's no shortcuts that are taken. So once the permit has been issued, right, and the work is about to be carried out, right, that crew lead looks at the details on the permit record, and part of those details could include, the requirement to deliver a toolbox talk, or like I said, some people call it a PSSR, a pre-start safety routine. It's just a review of all the risks that are present in order to make that crew aware of what they're about to encounter. And when we get to some of the screenshots, you'll see that capability within permit to work to capture the details of who delivered the toolbox talk, who it was delivered to, the content, things like that, just for some regulatory compliance capabilities and requirements. Additionally, in addition, right, to that toolbox talk, you might also perform some type of a dynamic risk assessment, right? So I could do all of the planning in the world, but as I get out into the live environment and I'm about to do the work, there might be other risks that I didn't plan for that I was not aware of as I was doing that planning. So that capability to perform and capture a dynamic risk review is also part of that permit to work and work management process when we kind of bring all of these together. So just taking a look at the permit record. So this is the permit header record. You can specify how long it's valid for, when it's required, the working hours of the permit, when does it start, is there a template? So if I'm doing the same types of permitting over and over again, I don't have to start from scratch and fill out all of the attributes on the permit. I might have a template for hot work or confined work, or work in a trench, where a lot of those details are automatically filled out when the template is applied. So as the risk assessment was completed, but I can have a reference to that risk assessment on my permit record. Right, so I can see those details quickly. I can navigate quickly to that risk assessment, and I can see everything that was captured as part of completion of that risk assessment. A couple of things just to point out. I had noted earlier, quite often, risk assessment is performed at the task level, and a lot of the safety planning is done to accommodate the most significant risk rating. And when I have a work order that has multiple tasks, right, the task that presents the most risk, if I plan properly for that task, the thinking is I'm able to address all of the hazards and risks that are present for the tasks that are less risky. The final tab that I wanted to present on permit is the Toolbox Talk tab. So this is where I capture those details of whether or not the toolbox talk was performed, right? Who it was completed by, when it was completed, and then in the comment section, capturing the details of who was present when it was performed. I've seen some customers even add the capability to have attachments here, so I can take a picture of the crew and all of the members of that crew who I performed the toolbox talk for, so it becomes part of that permanent record on the permit. And the final piece of permit is the physical permit itself, the ability to generate the permit, so I can bring it out to the work site, and I might hang it up in the window, or I might have it as part of my work pack. So if I'm ever questioned by a regulatory authority, I have that work permit as part of my package. Work order tracking, just to show where some of these capabilities are exposed on a work order. Right, so in the priority section on the work order, the HSE version of the work order, I can see the risk assessment, being exposed and referenced. And then as I navigate to the related records, any of those permits that have been created and pulled against this particular work order are presented within the permit to work section. And easily accessible and navigatable, right, using kind of the standard Maximo navigation tools and framework. So the next area I want to kind of walk through and talk to is really a use case around regulatory compliance. So a lot of the participants on the call today are actively, working within highly regulated businesses and industries. So proving and maintaining compliance can be a real challenge. So one of the tools that's provided within HSE is an application called regulatory compliance. And what the application allows you to do is to identify the regulations that are important to you and that you need to maintain that compliance for, and import them into the application. Right, so if I have a thick manual of regulations and I want to maintain my currency with those regulations, I might import the regulations. I can assign owners to those regs or owner groups, so I can assign that responsibility for maintaining that compliance. And a few things that you see kind of on the header for a regulation are the valid from and expiration dates. So anybody who's familiar with Maximo and some of the tools within Maximo, I can trigger some emails and some automatic communication using escalations based upon those expiration dates. right? So if I have a date that is the end of August and I want to trigger an email being sent to the owner or all of the potential members of an owner group, right, I can craft an escalation to automatically do that, pull the details of the regulation into the body of that email, and send it 30 days prior to the expiration. And so they have 30 days to go out, do the research on the regulation, find the most current regulation, and then if it's part of their responsibility, bring the most recent version of the regulation into the regulatory compliance application. But what's more, in my mind, more exciting than kind of maintaining currency, it's the ability to identify where these regulations might be referenced and used. So when we go to the Where Used tab, you'll see, right, an individual regulation can be referenced in all of these different places, right? It could be on an asset, a location. It could be on a permit. For me, when it's referenced on a job plan and a PM, is really where some of the value really starts to come into focus, I would say. Right? So if I have that capability to reference on a job plan, and then I can use the PM capability to automatically generate the work necessary to maintain my compliance, then when the job plan is applied, when the PM is run, the work order is generated. The work order references the individual regulation. So when the regulator shows up, it's as easy as creating a simple query to find all of my work orders that reference the regulation that I'm being audited for or that I need to prove compliance for. Right? And not only can I prove compliance, but I can also track my costs. I can see who actually performed the compliance activities. I can plan for those activities occurring, right? If it's compliance type activity and it's a crew or whoever's performing the work has additional skills, they might also be able to pick up some proximity work. So if they're doing the compliance work, well, maybe they could also check the oil and perform all of the PM type activities if there was an upcoming PM for maintenance. So the final area that I want to focus on is around incident management, right? And kind of safety observations, hazard reporting, and really starting to formalize the capture of near misses, right? Using not necessarily automated senses, but really the human senses, right? Your employees who are in the field, who are observing what's going on, encouraging them to report what they see and really establishing that safety culture, right? And really empowering them to really drive the success of your safety culture. So one of the applications that I was familiar with that was introduced back in 761, it's currently on the Mass, the application suite roadmap for upgrade, but it was one that I think added a lot of value to the HSE platform. And hopefully there's enough kind of groundswell from customers that really kind of raises the priority on the Mass roadmap to get this upgraded and into the Mass footprint. But the application was called Mobile Incident Reporter, right? So it's a mobile application that really simplified the process of capturing kind of those 4 bullets that you see on the screen, right? What happened? Where did it happen? Who was involved, right? Who caused it? Who saw it? Who were the witnesses? And did you do anything about it? And it allowed you to capture all types of incidents and near misses, whether there were safety observations, hazard reports, full-blown incidents with injuries and illness, as well as accidents that might have occurred. And as I start to capture systematically more of these details, right, it gives me a bigger data set to start to discover some of the relationships between incidents occurring and potentially work that's going on, or specific types of work or job plans that generate the most incidents. If that's the case, how can I come up with a way to address the fact that I see all of these near misses or I see an incident with injury, and how do I address those on my job plan, right? How do I better define kind of the safety plan that every time that this type of work is generated, right, and it's generated by creating a work order, applying a job plan, those details on the job plan really can address the root causes for some of the near misses that you might be seeing. So just to walk through kind of a quick walkthrough of the application and the UX experience that existed in this application. This is kind of the what happened step, right? So they click on create incident. You know, I can capture the summary, the description, the category, and the type. I can use a lot of the native capabilities of the device, right? So as I'm in the description field, I could use the voice to text capability to capture all of those description details. I can also use the ability to capture a photo or pick a photo from the gallery and associate that photo to the incident that's being created. So that's pretty much step one. What happened? Where did it happen? Also can utilize some of that device capability. So the device understands where I am, right? So using the GPS coordinates of that phone, I can choose to upload those GPS coordinates when the incident record is created over on the core side over in Core Maximo or in Mass. I can capture the street address, the city, state. If I'm not familiar with my environment, but there's something that's unique about where I am, I could provide some description details. Or if I am familiar with, I'm maybe one of the employees and I'm at a specific location, right? And that location has a barcode. I could scan the barcode on the location or the asset that I'm standing in front of, and I can pull, right, the address information and the location information from that barcode. The next step starts to talk about who was involved, right? And who was involved could be somebody who was the direct cause of the incident. Maybe they were driving a truck too fast, or they were a secondary cause. Maybe they were standing too close to the road and the person who was driving the truck swerved to avoid them, causing an accident. Or maybe they were a witness. They saw everything that happened, so I can capture those details as well. Or if it was a full-blown, it was an actual incident and not a near miss, I can capture all of the people who were injured or ill as part of this incident and capture the details of their injury. But again, with this application, the idea is, you know, with a few clicks, a few taps of the screen, capturing a few pictures, I'm able to get all of the details for the incident reported. So the person who's taking the next best action, doing the initial triage at the safety desk or the help desk can begin that process. So the final step here is what did you do about it, right? So if you saw something happen, did you take any action? Did you report it to the authorities? Did you put a temporary solution in place if it was a spill? Did you report it to a local supervisor? Did you place a warning? Maybe you put up a sign and you put up some type of a barrier so somebody didn't slip. Or did you advise the person? Maybe it's a near miss and somebody's driving too fast. Maybe you advise the violator, right, of their violation. That's kind of the mobile piece, the self-service piece that we're showing here. And again, right, the goal is to capture near misses, capture as many near misses as possible, reward the people, right, who are reporting near misses, because the risk of not capturing those near misses is the fact that they turn into full-blown incidents, and the cost of a full-blown incident is exponentially higher than taking the necessary actions to address the near misses and address the root causes of those near misses to remove them so the actual incident doesn't occur. So just shifting roles a little bit, right? So going from the person who's capturing the incident to the person who's actually in Maximo, who's receiving that incident when it's being reported, right? So this is just a configured start center. You know, this is an older version again, but it's one that still kind of resonates with, I think, a lot of the people on the call. We've created a result set for major leak incidents. which is what was just being reported. Right, there's a strong smell of natural gas. I can see some of those details of the incident that was reported, and I can click on that record to open those details. But before we go there, one of the things I did want to point out is if we had some type of a service desk or a safety desk, one of the neat capabilities that Maximo provides are what are called quick inserts. Right? And with the incident object and application, it gives you the chance to create templates for the most reported incidents. So as you begin to accumulate data, if there's, say, 5 or 10 different incidents that generate 80% of the call volume, what you can do is you'd create an incident template for those 10, and then you would create a quick insert portlet where I create an entry for each of the 10, which inserts an incident record and applies the ticket template at the same time with a single click of the mouse, right? So if I clicked on a safety observation, it's going to insert an incident record. It would set all of the type and category fields. Because it was a near miss, it might set some priority fields. And then on the template itself, there could be additional instruction provided in the long description fields. There could automatically be, some additional tasks that are created that need to be assigned to different groups. It's just a very powerful feature that Maximo provides that I think is somewhat underutilized. So if I open the record that was reported, right, this is kind of this is the incident, the HSE incident record. Right, I've kind of compressed things here so I could get it all on one screen, but it's really capturing those 4 data points. Right, what happened, where did it happen, who was involved, and what did you do about it? So I can see the address information up here. This is some of the incident details and some of the priorities related to those details. Here's the actions that were taken. And then finally down below is the person's impacted section. So for each of those people who were captured, I can see their name, their phone number, and the role that they played within the incident. And just to note, excuse me, each of these person records aren't necessarily Maximo person records, right? These could be ad hoc, captured on the fly, where I'm not actually validating against the Maximo person object, but I can just capture the details as part of the record. And as I'm doing that follow-up, maybe there's some claims that need to be filed as part of this, or some more heavy-duty injury type OSHA reporting that needs to be done. Well, I have all of that information stored on the record and at my fingertips, and HSE actually incorporates some of that OSHA reporting capability directly within the incident application. One other quick note is just the location of the attachments. Right. So one thing that we thought would be that IBM thought would be of value is the location of attachments on an incident record. Right. So rather than being buried kind of in the paperclip where it's a couple clicks deep to get to those attachments, they're exposed directly in the body of the incident record, and I can see the details of the attachment, and I can see the description without having to clicking or open anything on that incident record. So as we kind of get to the end of the content of today's presentation, we've really just scratched the surface of what HSE 762 provides, right? If we take a look at kind of this footprint, right, we're just looking at 6 of the applications that are available across all of the different business processes that are supported, right? We're looking at risk assessment, permit to work, work management, kind of over on that control of work and work management columns. And then in the HSE column, really looking at incident management and mobile incident reporting. And compliance, to me, is kind of near and dear to my heart. I've worked with a lot of customers where regulatory compliance is really a major pain point. And I think the capabilities that Maximo brings to the table in eliminating some of those costs and simplifying that process is very powerful. Additionally, I think the ability to identify and really systematically address risk that is present, identify risks kind of at an on an ad hoc basis using some of the incident reporting tools really helps companies capture near misses and avoid some of those full-blown incidents and costs associated with some of those full-blown incidents. So I know we have, I think we're using some of the Q&A. If there's any questions that were out there, we have about 20 minutes left. We can go through some of the Q&A, but if what I wanted to make sure everybody is aware that, you know, we'd be happy if anybody wants to dive deeper on any of your specific HSE use cases and the integration that can exist between your HSE functions and your Maximo business processes, primarily around work and asset management, scheduling of work, you know, and how we can use kind of those core Maximo capabilities to really enable an integrated environment. You know, we'd love to talk to you guys. So with that, let me switch over back to the webinar. I just want to see if there's anything in the Q&A, Bill.
Yeah, thank you, Kyle. It was very comprehensive. I don't know if there was any updates to the survey that you might want to look at.
Let me take a look. It looks like we have 5 respondents. So there was 3 who knew their company slogans, 2 who didn't. And it looks like there's some level of integration, but I would say it's more trending towards the not integrated side of the world than integrated. So we'd love to be able to help you think about how they can become more tightly integrated using Maximo HSE.
Kyle, I'd like to ask a question based on some of the things you talked about this morning.
Sure.
You know, it's been about 20 years since you started your involvement with Maximo and HSE, and you know, seen a lot of client requests and design, and develop solutions for them. And today you talked a lot about what the insight and intelligence you can receive from near misses, to ensure that you don't have those incidents, that your risk program is fulfilling your the mitigation of actual incidents. What do you see, in addition to learning from that, what do you see as the evolution or the growth as users start to migrate from the prior releases of Maximo to the Maximo application suite? From your perspective over the last 20 years, what opportunities do you see people starting to employ today that you might want to share?
Yeah, that's a good question. But I think actually one of the things I do see that's different in MAS is the license model, right? So historically, Maximo HSE was an add-on. It was an add-on license that dropped on top of an existing Maximo implementation. But with app points, right, and the move to MAS, it actually presents an opportunity where I can use some of those app points to start to explore some of the HSE capabilities without the full commitment to purchasing additional license, right? If that makes sense, right? It allows me to test something out in my dev environment, kind of try to work it into my process. If it doesn't work, then the app points just go back into the app points bank, and I don't have a license that now is part of my footprint that has to be renewed over and over again as I upgrade. I think that's kind of one of the things I've seen. The other thing I've seen is it's just interesting when people start to discover the relationship between work being performed and incidents that occur, right? Whether it's human factors, right? I see, somebody performing this type of work, and they get hurt. And you start to look at why did they get hurt? Well, they were at their end of their shift. You know, they've been working for 9 hours already. Maybe this is a piece of work that shouldn't be performed when they're in the last hour of their shift. Just insight like that, that when you bring together work management and HSE process and risk management and assessment, you know, some of those insights come to the fore, just become clearer, right, to the people who are planning the work and the people who are running some of the HSE programs.
Thank you, Kyle. You know, you touched on something at the end there that you've talked about before, regarding how, you know, workarounds in organizations, especially with technology, become the standard. And you know, I think what you showed today kind of helps eliminate some of those workarounds by establishing and ensuring that the process is followed, utilizing technology again as an enabling tool for that.
It's when the workarounds become the norm, where there's a great amount of risk that's present because the proper process isn't being followed, but nobody recognizes that anymore. Okay, I don't see any other Q&A items. So Bill, I think we could probably wrap it up.
Yes, this is just if you share your last page with your contact information. We'd like to thank you all for attending this morning. And as Kyle led off the session with, he would be very interested in talking about the possibility of use case studies, exploring solutions for those. So Kyle, your email and phone number here. And I would encourage anyone with any questions on how to best utilize Maximo. As I know, there's a lot of familiar faces and names on this session, and we've been speaking about Maximo for a long time. And you know, the estimates of, you know, what percentage of Maximo do you use? You know, is it 5%, 10%, 25%? It's usually not in the 50% plus, but you know, I think if there are things that you're looking to utilize, someone like Kyle can help you scope those out to make sure that, you know, make those you know, goals realities with the application. So on behalf of Kyle, any last words? I'd like to say thank you for attending this morning, and please feel free to reach out if it can be of further assistance.
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.